Hey guys, George from SoundTraxx here. Want to talk to you a little bit about our steam decoder. We've made a lot of comments about our diesel decoders lately, but we really want to talk about the improvements we made over our steam Tsunami into the Tsunami2. First of all, the most characteristic sound that you hear on a steam locomotive is the whistle. And with the whistle, we've got 63 different choices in the steam decoder for you to choose from. But the most common sound you hear out of the steam locomotive is the exhaust chuff, and that's the sound of the pistons running in and out as the steam vents out into the atmosphere. And on the decoder, there's 10 different choices that you can choose from. You've got 3 light, 3 medium, 3 heavy, and a geared locomotive sound that you can pick to make your locomotive sound more prototypical. But one of the things we've done is improve the way the chuff playback is done on the Tsunami2. For example, using the Tsunami2, you'll notice that there is not a cam wire. That's because it's no longer necessary. The chuff is timed by watching the back EMF of the motor. By using the back EMF, or back electromotive force, the decoder is able to identify rotations of the motor. And by setting the chuff rate in CV114, the decoder can identify how quickly that motor is rotating and therefore keep the chuffs in time. So for example here, we're going to move forward at about speed step 10. Now when I put a little resistance on the wheel to slow the rotations, you're going to hear that chuff slow as well. This way, when you encounter a grade and your locomotive slows to pull that train up the hill, your chuff is going to maintain timing with the wheels because it notices that the rotations of the motor is a little slower as it's using more power. The next thing I want to talk about is how our chuff playback is done. The chuff playback is a smart algorithm that as you increase in speed, your locomotive sound becomes more realistic instead of a staccato helicoptering type sound effect that you got a little bit from the original Tsunami and most of the other sound decoders that are out there in the market today. What happens is the chuff sound is a specific time, and as the locomotive increases in speed, the ability to play the entire sound clip becomes less and less as the duration between chuffs becomes less and less. And what happens is those other decoders cut the chuff off so that it can play the next chuff and maintain timing. So what we've done is we've instituted an intelligent algorithm to make sure that the chuff gives you a more realistic effect. So we're going to move this locomotive now forward at about speed step 30 or 40. We'll go to speed step 40 here, and you can kind of hear how that chuff is smoothed out a little bit. Where our chuff playback algorithm really shines is when you've got a locomotive like an articulated. Because it plays 8 chuffs per revolution on a simple articulated locomotive, you're hearing more chuffs, and so this is where you really want to have the chuff playback algorithm not cutting itself off to play the next chuff. So for this Athearn Challenger here, we're going to go ahead and move forward at about speed step 30 so you can really hear how that plays. So you can really hear more of the rod clanking, and you can hear that whirring chuff, but it's a more realistic playback effect. And now we'll bring it to a stop. And you can hear as the locomotive coasts. We'll apply the brakes. Now the next feature we want to talk about is our Dynamic Digital Exhaust, or DDE. This is a feature that we built into our decoders, even going back all the way to the original DSDs. And what this does is this adjusts the overall tone and intensity of the exhaust chuff based on what the locomotive is doing. So when that locomotive is pulling a heavier train, you're going to hear that chuff barking a little bit louder than it would be if it was running as a light locomotive. Now, to show this off, we're going to use this locomotive here on rollers, and we're going to move forward here about speed step 15 or so. And you're going to hear that chuff really start to take as it gets to speed, and then you're going to hear it back off as it maintains its speed at around 15. Now this is doing it automatically by monitoring the load on the motor. So to show this off, I'm going to put a little resistance on the motor this time so you can hear the change in the exhaust tone. So the locomotive is working harder to maintain speed against my finger. This simulates the heavy load on the train that you would be if you were pulling. And now with our dynamic digital exhaust feature Playback in this Athearn Challenger, we're going to hear how those effects really take place. And so we're going to move forward here at about speed step 15 again. You kind of hear that locomotive really barking as it gets to speed. Once it settles in, you kind of hear the chuff back off a little bit as the engineer is maintaining his speed. Now again, we're going to put a little resistance on the wheels to simulate. And you kind of hear how that chuff intensifies a little bit. Now the other thing we built into our decoder is the ability to manually adjust the cutoff to help enhance your dynamic digital exhaust experience. So you can manually adjust the Johnson bar. So we're going to do that with function 5. You're going to hear that exhaust tone change as we implement function 5. And now we're going to press F5 to go into a full drifting mode. You're going to hear the chuff back away, and you're going to hear our new rod clank sound. And this is a really enhanced opportunity to really get the sound of the locomotive to match properly. You're hearing the snifter drop, you're hearing the leaky valve packing, and the rod clank as it's drifting. And again, if I want to re-engage, I'll press the F6. You'll hear the chuff re-engage, the snifter lift. And now you can hear that chuff take over as the dynamic digital exhaust adjusts the tone of the chuff. We'll bring it to a stop. We'll use our brakes. Now this is just some of the features that we built into the Tsunami2 to really enhance the operation. These are available now at your hobby shop and retailers online. And if you have any questions, contact us at SoundTraxx.com or support@SoundTraxx.com, and we'll help you set your locomotive up to.